Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
No problem.
We'll just wait for Mr. Peretta to return. There we go.
Do you mind if I have Jacob go first so he can get out before?
No, go right ahead.
You've got an early morning.
Call this evening's meeting to order and start with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. And we're going to start our meeting tonight with availability of the board for comments from the public or press, if there's anyone here for that reason. And I'm not seeing anything happening there, so we'll move on to information and reports from board members. And we'll start with Mr. Andrew David and his student ex officio report.
So I met with the junior high student council, and here are the notes and concerns that they had. So on the first thing, the junior high student council has a lot of involvement with the students. They have at least 20 members showing up to every meeting, with up to 35 with I believe it was 28 showing up to the meeting that I was there for. A lot of them are there to participate in the setting up pep rallies and dances, and they're very, very involved overall, and even more so than I'd say from what I see from the high school student council. The pep rallies especially have seen a major increase in involvement in both teachers and students, with up to 75 students participating at the last pep rally, and teachers from more than just the core participants, including guidance counselors and Mrs. Jarrett herself as the student council advisor. One of the major complaints that they did have was about the locker rooms, and specifically either rumors that were spread or just the general chaos, I guess, of middle schoolers when left in a room, generally unsupervised when under subs. One student I talked to who was a 9th grader on the track team actually mentioned that it was almost an extreme lack of care from the substitute teachers that were monitoring the boys' locker room. I have brought this to both Mr. Burke and Mr. Halliday, the administrator at the junior high, and it's being handled. So there's not a lot to worry about, but it did come up in our meeting. So the student council elections are actually very involved, surprisingly. The students create campaign videos, posters. They encourage other students to vote for them, and the entire school is involved, unlike the high school student council. During advisory, they share a presentation with videos that the student council elects have put together and recorded themselves, as well as Google Forms for every student to fill out. making sure that not just those who are super active get a voice, which I think is something the high school should probably consider. And but there were a lot of members participating in this election, with, I believe it was 5 for vice president, 2 for president, 2 for secretary, and 3 for treasurer, which is a lot more than we see at the high school, actually. And I believe a couple of roles often run unprotested. And if you wish, I am able to share the videos put together by the students, but a few of them were very embarrassed by the thought of me presenting it to the board, so please ask for that individually. Another thing that they found very helpful was the advisory. At the junior high, you get about 25 minutes at the beginning of the day for clubs, activities, like getting to know other students, bonding, as well as announcements from the teachers. They have social emotional learning activities, which are basically just for people to help regulate emotions, organizational skills, different methods of learning that might be helpful to different students, and as well as like video recaps for the building, which have interviews, interviews of sports, and in the future they would like to include interviews of clubs and extracurricular activities. The student council has also taken on creating a video for anti-bullying. It was brought to their attention by an anonymous 8th grade student who wanted to write a script that they would produce. This is the recap video that that was shown in one of the advisories as a in the form of a newsroom interview that was created by the student council. You can skip through a little bit. Oh, that's not. This slide was not supposed to be here. That video is supposed to be the end. I believe you have to be in presentation to view it, but. Yep, that'll work. But that was just the video that was shared in all advisories one of the days. Okay. Any questions?
Quick question.
Yeah.
On your
Yeah.
the one before last slide, you have Drexel there. Is there a reason for that? You didn't talk
Oh,
about it.
yeah. So the slides that are presented at every advisory, there are different actions that are going on in school, like the positive recognition ceremonies, and as well as auctions, which started out as one of the teachers providing dollars, which were just cut out pieces of paper that the students could earn and then use at a class-wide auction. And but it has expanded to the whole school, where different teachers will bring items, or the school will provide items that students can bid on every week. And so the week that Mrs. Jarrett was informing me about, they had a $20 direct subs gift card for auction.
Were you surprised at the level of activity and enthusiasm for the student council at the junior high?
I was impressed, to say the least. So.
Well, thank you for
anything
reaching out.
I'm sorry.
I'm going ahead.
Anything that you saw that you feel like the high school student council could kind of emulate?
I think the involvement in the tasks that that the high schoolers try to avoid, say setting up for dances. I know setting up and taking down is often a task that very few of our student council members show up for. And from what Mrs. Jarrett was telling me, a good portion of the students actually show up to help decorate for these dances. And the elections. The elections are pretty cool.
I was just going to say thank you for reaching out to the junior high. I think that was a wonderful idea. And really to see the connection, and maybe, as you say, high school can learn something from them. Very good.
Well, it's also good because without a report like you just gave, we would really have no idea of what's happening with the junior high student council. Doubtful that we would have much of an idea what's going on here at the high school either, but your bringing this information back to us is really very helpful.
Andrew, why do you think that they have a greater involvement than the high school does? Do you think it's who the advisor is, or do you think it's because it's just a more cohesive group of students, or what was your take? Why are they more successful?
Well, I think it was more of the culture in that classroom with the advisor. It's much more like you want to be there, you want to be involved, versus at the high school, people are just there to be with friends, basically. I notice a lot of people sit in groups and chat during meetings versus trying to help provide information or ideas for, say, the Spirit Week that happens, and or ideas for the pep rally. But they were just more happy to be contributing to the conversation.
So maybe the students felt more engaged, like their voice was being listened to and their ideas were being considered? Yeah.
Okay. I think the high school has it more set up as a presentation with a bit of a Q&A. So there's the vice president and president sit at the front, give a speech, or go over some slides, and they ask for recommendations. Versus at the junior high, everyone sits at tables, and then Mrs. Jarrett will announce something, the different officers will say their piece, and then everyone can contribute to the conversation at all times.
Any other questions for Andrew? Thank you. Really interesting report. We'll move on now to the Policy Committee report. Mr. Monroe is not here. Is there a member of the Policy Committee that could just walk us through that, the notes?
I think those are other duties as assigned. So we had a good Policy Committee meeting. We reviewed Policy 5551, the allocation of Title I Part A funds. That was a review only, no updates. Policy 5570, financial accountability. That was also a review only with no updates. 5571, allegations of fraud. Again, another review only, no updates. We did look over current policy 5574, which is Medicaid compliance. The law has changed now, and we are looking at possibly recommending a rescission of this at the next board meeting. The policy now is required if you have $1 million or more in Medicaid recoup. We don't. Even under the current policy of $500,000, we're not there. The reason that we would possibly would be recommending a rescission is there are some aspects of that policy that we don't currently do, and I don't know how we would do some of those. So again, if we don't need it, it's probably a time to get rid of it. But we'll bring that back at the next meeting. Policy 5580 was reserve funds, and again, that is a review only. Policy 5620, our fixed asset inventory and accounting and tracking, review only, no changes. We did look at an Erie policy number 3220. It's not one that we currently have, but was asked at one of our previous board meetings to take a look at, and that is the use of assistance animals. We looked at the Erie 1 policy. We also looked at 4 schools locally that have it, all pretty much the same based on the Erie policy. We decided not to go further with this one as it is a matter of law with Americans with Disabilities Act, and let the law stand in rather than create a policy. And I believe those are all that we talked about.
Any questions for Mr. Burke on the policy committee notes? Okay, we'll move on then to the president's report.
If I can say something. The
please.
Facilities subcommittee met Monday. I don't have to report. We didn't create any report, but we met because we saw a presentation of the two good vendors, and the board, 4 of us here. So the subcommittee was there, and the administration team was there, and also Gavin Regan was there to listen to that presentation about the turf, the type of turf we could have to replace the current turf. And we have 2 different vendors, and we looked up the options, and there's good options out there. So we are waiting for the bid, the RFP to go out, and then we'll see the price. But in the meantime, it educated us on what to look for and what to select down the road. So it was a 2-hour meeting we had this past Monday.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions for Robert? All right, we'll move on to the president's report in that case. And I've just got a very brief report on the legislative meeting that trustees Peretta and Murphy and Mr. Burke and I all attended on February 27th at BOCES. Senator Steck and Walczak and Assemblyman Gray and the Chief of Staff for Assemblyman Blankenbush were all there. The discussion revolved around essentially 6 legislative priorities that BOCES leadership feels are in need of additional consideration in the state budget. They include revisions to the foundation aid formula, full funding of universal pre-K, more money for capital outlay projects over $100,000, the workforce shortage issues that the region is experiencing and how the legislature could assist with things like housing incentives and easier interstate certification transfers, that sort of thing, and civil service law improvements, as well as the need for additional funding for special ed services. And the big issue, of course, that they saved till last was discussion about the zero-emission bus mandate. Just very briefly on these issues, I feel like we have a lot of support from our local legislators. There seems to be quite a bit of agreement that while it's great that foundation aid is fully funded, it still doesn't help rural schools as much as it should because of the outdated nature of the foundation aid formula. There seems to be agreement that if the state is going to mandate universal pre-K, it should be fully funded. An increase in allowable capital outlay spending is really needed so that we can do regular maintenance of school buildings and not have to rely on every 5 or 6 years when we do a capital project. And of course, there is full agreement that the EV bus mandate needs to have major tweaking or a slowdown in the timeline or some sort of different approach, something to allow time for technology to catch up with the transportation demands of rural schools. The attendance was very good. There were 4 of us from our district there. Most of the other districts in the BOCES were represented. And a lot of good back and forth discussion on some important funding issues. I certainly would love to have anyone that was there that maybe took better notes than I did talk about anything that they took away from the session. Trish, Kevin?
You summed it up nicely, and there's probably not much any of our legislators can do about it because they're on the wrong side of the aisle.
That's true, too.
We'll find out somewhere late in April, likely, when the dysfunction comes to rest, what we're going to get.
Okay, that ends my report. So we'll move on to reports from administration, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Burke.
So we're going to change the order just a little bit with Mr. Haggett's permission. So Mr. Lincoln, I apologize. If we could put transportation up first. So Mr. Room, I'm going to ask that you present. The reason I'm doing this is our transportation director will probably be back in the office by 5 a.m. in the morning and probably on the phone with me at 4:30 talking about snow. So I'd like to get him in and out, and so he's fresh in the morning for us. So this is Mr. Jacob Room, our transportation director.
Could you please move closer to the microphone? I don't know if it's on even.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just going to do a general overlay of our department. We have 42 vehicles. 30 of them are Massena Central School vehicles, 66 passenger buses. And we have 6 state aid buses, 3 Traverses now. Actually, we got 2 brand new Traverses just came in. So the van's going to be replaced. We have a shop pickup truck, and then we have 2 handicap units, 66 passenger and a 30 passenger. Overall, we have 4 buses for Massena for spares and 2 for state ed for spares. We have 55 employees now down there, 28 bus drivers. We have 1 float bus driver. The other one has moved up into a position. We have 3 mechanics, 2 12-month and a 10-month, a secretary, a dispatcher, and she works 3:30 to 5 most of the time, and then Raiders night she works till 7. We have 20 bus aides, and we have a sub driver, but he's currently in Florida. There's 17 fixed routes in the district. There's 4 fixed routes on the reservation. There's 1 PSPK bus. There's 2 Potsdam ABA buses, 1 Canton, 1 Ogdensburg, and then throughout the middle of the day, we have 11 buses running back and forth to Seaway Tech. These numbers come from sheets that Tracy keeps track of. This is from last year, so it should be close to similar. We do about 3,000 to 4,000 miles a month for the district buses, 3,000 to 3,500 for the state ed buses. We do about 40 8,000 miles for the district buses yearly and 42 for the reservation buses. The shortest runs are 15 to 20 miles a trip. The longest are, actually I see one that's about 88 miles a trip. We average 38 to 45 during a month transporting them for Massena district kids. We do about 2,000 to 3,000 for the reservation kids. This is kind of interesting to me, but February is the lowest for ours, but October was the highest. And then for the state ed, same thing. March is the highest, but February is the lowest. We average 95 to 100,000 kids a year in that 10-month time. The district is 122 square miles. Goes from Chase Mills to Norfolk to Brazier to the territories. The territories is about 19 square miles. Our oldest bus is 2018. Our newest are 26s. We just got 5 of them. The highest mileage is 93,000 and the lowest is 1,700. The state ed ones, they are older and they have a little over 100,000 on our 2 spare ones. They're all diesel. The cost of a bus several years ago was about 100 grand, and now it's up to 170 without options. And that's a diesel. It's not the EV ones. We try to keep a 7-year turnaround. If we go past that, we get a lot of rot in the bodies, in the back, and everything, and DOT doesn't like that. We've added a few options. They're all safety feature options. We've put safe lights for the school bus and the stop signs. They're very bright. Double handrails going up. The steering wheel, we moved the controls back to the steering wheel because it's a lot safer for the drivers functioning. There's a light over top of the dome or the entryway now, so the kids can see getting on when it's early in the morning. We have integrated car seats, so they just pull down and you have a car seat built into the school bus seat itself. All headlights are LED now, and we retrofitted the whole fleet LED as well. And then if you haven't seen them, the red with black lettering, it makes them look really nice. The cost, we all know it's going up, but from my experience being the mechanic and then moving over, a fuel tank, they last 5 to 7 years most, and they've gone up $1,000. Alternator now over $2,000, $1,800, and then brakes. Used to be able to do a whole bus for about $800. Now it's close to $2,000. And appreciate your time. Questions now?
Yeah, Jacob, when we're talking about tires on the buses, each 66 passenger has 6 tires, right?
Correct.
Okay. So about how often now do you replace the tires on the diesel buses?
They go anywhere, it depends on the route.
Yes.
So the steer tires really wear out quicker than the drive tires. The drive ones will go about 30,000 miles, pushing it. The front ones maybe 10 to 15,000 miles, but they tend to chop. And so then we have issues. That's why we got the balancer and the tire machine.
So if we went to an EV bus, about how long would you suppose that those tires would last?
The studies aren't out there enough for the EV buses.
Yeah.
They don't weigh They don't weigh too much more than a regular bus. They're a little over 30 and a regular is 29. So I think the biggest thing would be the steer tires, the same. So I couldn't now honestly tell you without having them for a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Are you seeing increasing fuel costs now, or are we locked into a state contract that is sort of mitigating the spike in gas and especially diesel price these days?
So the gas fluctuates, that one fluctuates, but the diesel we're locked in.
Okay.
Until-
When does that come up again?
Beginning of the new year, July 1.
July 1, okay. Probably expecting to see a pretty big
yeah,
increase
yeah,
then, huh?
Yeah. And a delivery, we normally get 5,000 to 8,000 gallons delivered at a time, and from what I can remember, it's about 20 grand for a load.
And I had one other question. Do you have any idea what accounts for the fluctuation in student ridership in varying months?
No, I honestly don't.
That's
No.
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing as well.
You mentioned the price for a standard bus.
Yeah.
I believe it was Type C. What are non-standard buses, and like what would the different costs be? Do you know offhand, or?
So what I mean by standard is just bare bones, no accessories, anything like that. That's what I mean by a standard bus. There are Type Bs and Type As. Type As, we just got rid of a couple of those Type As because they're not as safe as the Type C. The Type B is basically that 30-passenger wheelchair bus that we just bought, and that one was actually more expensive than the standard ones.
So how you gave a range, or a typical cost, $170,000 for a brand new standard bus now, with the options and things for safety and whatnot that you're putting on the buses, that you're ordering to be put on the buses. How much more than that 170 is that?
For the options,
Yeah.
so the double handrails is $1,000. The lights are maybe 500 to 1,000, somewhere in there, for the lights to be added to the door and to the fenders. It really depends on the setup, and the bus company sometimes works the options in. Safe Light is now, or the one that we switched to, they're now a standard option. You can't change that. And I personally like them myself. That's an expensive one. If you wanted to retrofit a bus, just the school bus signs, it's $3,000. The whole bus, stop signs in the front, is $5,000 if you wanted to retrofit one. But
And Paul, there's some other things that we add on as well. So we are now putting luggage racks on all of our buses. And the reason we do that, we have those compartments that are underneath, and that's around, I think, a $6,000 or $7,000 option, Jacob.
yes,
And we do that because anytime we take a sports trip, that equipment should be stored underneath for safety reasons, and we're making that universal. Every one of our buses now, we're ordering it that way. It just makes our planning of what bus can go out on a trip that much easier. We are, some of the other safety issues like Jacob talked about, those double handrails, the extra lighting, the LED lighting, it's that much brighter, so hopefully people can actually see and not pass red lights. Heated stair treads. The black, believe it or not, the black that's around our flashing lights, that's an add-on. It's not a lot, but again, when you have that black around the flashing lights in the front and back, it makes it more visible according to the safety standards. We also put white rooftops on. I think that's about an $1,100 or $1,200 option. And the science behind that is, especially during the summer months, anytime really from May through October, it can lower the temperature on the bus 10 to 11 degrees, which, again, without air conditioning on the entire bus, makes it that much more manageable for the students. All of our new IC buses, our international buses, also automatically come with air conditioning in the driver's compartment. So the first couple of seats, if you're lucky enough to be one of those kiddos who gets to sit in the front, yeah, you got nice cool air. Our new buses also, if you've ever sat on a bus seat for the driver, you would freeze on your right side and melt on your left because the heater was at your bottom of your left leg, and that's the only heat the driver ever had. Now it's more automotive where it's actually up in the dashboard and along the floor. So again, more even heat for the driver, and that's a standard, but we do try to add anything that's on that's a safety. Yeah, Trish, it's not funny unless you've driven a bus in the wintertime and you melt your leg. But so those are things that have been fixed. And again, it's a lot of the safety issues, things that we do. The double handrail sounds goofy, but when you're a 4-year-old trying to climb that and you're making sure you've got handles on both sides. We tried to add it, I think, to a couple of our buses a couple of years ago. It didn't save us a whole lot by doing it as an add-on. Plus, we also have the liability that we're the ones who bolted it. So let the company do it, pre-order. We get state aid on it to about 90%. So a lot of extra safety features. We've also talked about changing out our tires. Jacob, I can't remember how many plies we were. Was it 10 ply versus 12 ply or something like that?
So we're switching them from 10 Rs to 11 Rs. They're size-wise. And what I've seen, because 2 of the state ed buses have, they have 11R tires in the Kendras. They actually, we haven't had to put a single set of tires on them since we got them. And they have 50 to 60,000 miles on them right now. Because 10Rs, really the only ones that use them are school districts. 11Rs are on all your heavy trucks, your dump trucks, everything like that. So you have more options and they're better made. So that's what we're trying to switch.
The one thing Jacob didn't talk about tonight is we are regularly DOT inspected. Every bus has a regular inspection with DOT, and our pass rate with our mechanics down there, we're in the high 90s on a regular basis, if not 100% on our pass rate. So again, making sure that the buses that we put on the road are mechanically safe and sound for our students.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, if we can move then into just an update on our budget planning, where we are currently. When the governor put out her proposal, the cap or the floor for foundation aid was established at 1% in her executive budget. With that information, we were looking at about a 1.32% overall increase. Our foundation aid dropping from last year in terms of the value of that increase. You can see there that we would be looking at a total state aid package of just slightly over $53 million based on the governor's initial budget proposal. On our next slide, I'm going to take a little bit more of an optimistic approach, keeping in mind that the floor is applying to over 400 of the 700 school districts. Both one-house budgets have a 2% floor, which if that's where we end up with, you can see that we have a little extra growth in our state aid to now about $53.36 million. That is the bulk of our revenue. Any questions on those 2 slides? Okay, as we move on to the next one, our preliminary budget expense increases. And again, these are all preliminary. And we are getting close now to the point where we will have that finalized budget for the board by April 20th. Our total salaries increasing by $1.258 million. Based on that, then our Social Security, the FICA, increasing by 96 and change. Our rate of contribution to the employee retirement system will be up 45,570. TRS, 96,000. Our workers' comp, we have a 2% increase on that this year. We are seeing positive numbers with workers' compensation. So our growth will be 5,433. And our health insurance consortium, we have agreed at this point that we will see a 6% increase on health insurance premiums, which is great information because it's a couple percentage points lower than the national average, so we're still trending well. That will end up being a cost to the district of $934,568. Our total just on these types of increases related to personnel, $2.4 million. Again, Chris, if you go back to that last slide, please, the state aid side, this is where things begin to get tough. When our fixed costs on employees are going up 2.4, but our foundation aid and our state aid formula is going up 771,000, we can see that we're into that potential where we are going to begin using some of our reserves and some of our unappropriated fund balances in the future. Moving to slide 5. Each year we work with our administrative team, both instructional and support, to determine what are the requests for next year. And these are some of the highlights that the Finance Committee has considered, and we'll be moving forward with these. This year we are looking at doing summer school in person for our core classes. So our algebra, one of our sciences, most likely global, and English, and possibly one other. That'll cost about $50,000 to do that in person. For the past number of years, we have not budgeted in the actual budget for our music instruments or for upgrades to the auditorium. We've done it through forward spending with leftover monies. Not a real great way to fund some of our most important projects and our most important work. So we'd like to put that actually in as line items for the budget next year. And Learn to Lead is another one, and that is a mistake with that $25,000. I will correct that. I believe that should say $7,500 is the Learn to Lead program. Again, that's not been budgeted in the past, but it does need to go there. We've been doing it for a number of years. I believe next year we should be able to partner with another school, which would then make us eligible to go through a COSER, which would make it BOCES aidable. So that cost will actually be an 80% reduction with a state aid after that. Increasing our curriculum and instruction supplies by $5,000 and increasing the total mentor stipend by $2,625. Under special education, strategic budget requests, there will be some additional changes, but not to the overall bottom line. We're going to be realigning how we do some things, reconfiguring some of the titles that we use. But for next year, what we'll be looking at is one of our classrooms, that's a 12-1-1, currently does not have a teaching assistant. It does need one. So we're going to be converting an aide position to a TA position, and that costs an additional $16,000 just on the salary for that. We're also looking to bring in an occupational therapist, and that'll be about a $100,000 cost. We do believe that we'll be able to reduce that overall impact to the budget due to the idea that we'll be replacing some outside sources that provide occupational therapy now. Under the facilities, at the 3 elementary schools, each one has a floor scrubber. They are getting old and starting to break down. The original request was for 3 of them. We're not able to fund that at this point, but we will do 1 this year with a strategic plan that will try to hit 1 each of the next 3 years and get those replaced. The supply side here, $113,000, that's going to look like an astronomical number, but a lot like the band instruments, we have been purchasing our supplies not as a line item in the budget, but through forward spending, which again is not a real great way to be planning to purchase tissue paper and toilet paper. So we're going to put that in as a line item so it's there for future years, and we don't have to rely on unexpended funds to do that. We are doing that this year just so the board is aware, because I know one of our board members has to live with this every year in his own job. We're going to use spend down money or forward spending this year to buy for the 26-27 school year. May and June of next year, we'll actually be using this $113,000 that you see here to purchase for the 27-28. I always want to be a year ahead. We get on that cooperative bid, but that way we're not waiting in July for supplies to come in that we need for cleaning that school year. So again, we are putting this in the budget. We're taking it away from forward spending. And the next one, trash removal. Right now we spend just under $50,000 with our contract with the Village of Massena. The Village of Massena has notified us that they will not be able to do our trash removal beyond next year, so we are looking at other trash haulers. The first bid that we have for this shows an increased cost of $70,000. So it's a major increase to our overall budget, but we have to do it. And I understand why the Village of Massena is getting out of that business. It is a cost loser, or it's a cost for them. They're not recouping through that revenue that they gain.
Did we talk to them about giving them more?
I did, because my feeling on this is basically if we're going to pay a private contractor $70,000 more, I'd be just as happy to pay that to the Village of Massena if it made their, if it was a benefit, right, to the village. And I don't think that they're willing to go there. I'm not sure. I think there's a number of factors. One of them might be I think they may need a new vehicle, and that's not an inexpensive proposition to get a new trash vehicle. And it might also be on the personnel side as they try to trim their budgets and live within their means. But I did offer, and so this doesn't affect residential. It only affects the commercial pickup with the dumpster arms. But yes, I did offer that, Robert. I'd much rather do business with the Village of Massena. Okay, on the athletic side, Huddle, it's our camera system. It's an additional $2,500 for next year. For the rifle team, our rifles that we use for that, those are air rifles. They are getting old, and Gavin is trying to do a slow replacement of those, and I believe that's for 2 of them. He's being very optimistic on the increase of cost for officials, thinking that that might only go up $1,000 next year. We anticipate an increase in the ice rental of $2,000, and our girls wrestling program, which was rather successful this year. We had, I believe, 3 athletes go to states. We are proposing that that become an official sport next year. So the $6,575 would be for the coaches for that program. So again, another good problem to have with student participation. The next spending item is a recommendation that we have a second SRO. And again, sticking with that same cost of about $150,000. Just to make sure everybody understands, we are looking at 4 66-passenger buses next year. These are diesel. They are not electric, so I can put everyone's mind to rest on that. That cost is $757,638. These have already been reserved, hoping that the budget passes and that we'll be able to do that. We have to reserve our buses sometime, usually October, November, so we stay in the queue to get those for the following year. So those are in our name at Leonard Bus Sales. The next part, capital outlay project. So through facilities, we have looked at a number of different aspects, and the recommendation is that we do asbestos abatement at J.W. Leary. We will be removing floor tile that contains asbestos. We'll begin that process. It's probably going to take maybe 2 to 3 years to get rid of all of that flooring at J.W. Leary, but that'll be a major burden off the district's back once that is done over the next couple of years, and then that replacement is taken care of. That will really limit the amount of asbestos materials that we have in our district. That right now is our biggest single item, is the flooring at J.W. Leary. So really pleased that we're able to get that taken care of. Our total draft spending plan, and some of this has now changed. So right now our total draft spending plan is $78 million. After our finance committee meeting tonight, that number is going to change a little bit. We'll have that number for you. Right now, that's a 4.9% increase. As of today, that required a $4.9 million fund balance. Actually, I should say as of yesterday, $4.9 million fund balance appropriation. Mallory, our business manager, has been looking at the revenues and updating those, not so much on the state projections, but really on the actual revenues that are coming in. So that this is always real-time stuff. We're only able to give projections on revenues. And what Mallory was able to do is to really look at our revenues that are coming in right now and make a major modification. So in our revenue for this year from state ed, we're looking at about $4 million in extra revenue that our projections were not showing. And again, these are based on our actual numbers, our census numbers, our high cost numbers, and our BOCES numbers. So again, we're anticipating more. That's also going to trickle over into next year. So when we talk about $4.9 million of appropriated fund balance, it's going to be significantly less than that. We're also still in the process of making cuts to our budget. So before this morning, we were actually anticipating probably about a $3.9 million appropriation by the time we got done with the Finance Committee. It's going to be less, and even though we're appropriating it, we don't believe we're going to need it. It's always important that I remind everybody, there are areas where we have insulation in our budget. Some of those areas will always be special education. We cannot predict who's going to come to our school and what services they're going to need. So I like to have, and I think we have somewhere around $1 million or $1 million plus. It sounds like a lot of money on special education that we don't anticipate spending, but we also didn't anticipate spending some of that this year as we needed to hire new aides to meet the needs of our students. So again, we need to make sure we have insulation there. We also have some money set aside for equipment. We don't know what equipment is going to fail, so I always like to have extra money there. Extra money on utilities, that goes without saying right now. And even on our health insurance, like to have a little padding because we don't know who might go from a single plan to a two-person or who might go from a two-person to a family. And every time you make that jump up, it's $10,000 to $15,000. And if somebody goes from a single to a family, we're now talking about $20,000, $23,000. So again, we like to make sure we have spots in our budget. Do we have other areas where there's insulation? Not as much. But those are our four big areas. So when we talk about anticipating that we're going to have money left over at the end of next year, we're still anticipating that. It's hard to predict, though, how much will be left at June of 27. But we do have some padding in there for those unexpected costs. It would be malfeasance, basically, not to be prepared for a special needs student or a breakdown. So we have to have that. Again, we remain committed to have another budget with a 0% tax increase. And at this point, there's absolutely no recommendation and no need to go up beyond 0%.
I have a question. What does it mean when you dip into the reserve for the school district? What effect does that have on the district?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time, Andrew?
What does it mean when you dip into the reserve for the district? When you you mentioned you're 770,000 over. Where does that money come from, and what effect does it have, I guess, on
So with reserves?
Yeah.
So reserves are basically our savings account, and they're earmarked for certain specific aspects. So for example, with our capital project, we have two reserves. I think it's two reserves. That it totals about $15 million. And when we do our capital project, and we have to start paying that capital project in 29-30, I think 2029 we'll start paying, we're going to take some of that money out of that reserves to pay off those bonds. so that way we don't have to ask the taxpayers. So basically, we dip into our savings account that we put away. We also have other reserves for, another one would be for teacher retirement system. So if we saw a really big increase in TRS, we could pull some of that money out and not have to go back to the taxpayer to ask for it. So it's our savings. When we start dipping into our reserves and into our unappropriated fund balance, it means less savings. And one of the things we have to be very careful about is, while we have a very, very healthy reserve account and fund balance, it doesn't take many years of actually using 2 million, 5 million. It grows every year. So unless you bring our, we have to continue to try to bring our budget closer to in line so that our expenses don't overly exceed our revenue. Because if we do that, and we keep doing that for a long time, we will not have reserves. We will not have we will not have a fund balance. So the past couple of weeks have been pretty hectic. I think Mallory and I have had a few sleepless nights trying to figure out, okay, how do we not actually have that $4.9 million appropriation? So we made lots of adjustments. Like I said, I think we're down to really 3.9, and then with what she found today with extra revenue, or I shouldn't say extra, actual revenue, we're in a much better spot. But again, I think our finance committee is very much aware that there will be a time we have to use it, but we better have a plan so that we don't use it all up quickly. It's a rainy day account, but you can't have many rainy days. Did that answer it, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So you're spending your savings to exist.
Yeah.
And your savings go away and you don't have them anymore.
Yeah.
They don't replenish. That's, in a nutshell, what it means.
Yeah. And then so the I guess the money that goes to the capital project, that might decrease if you were to dip into your savings, say, multiple years in a row.
So with the reserve, so if it's a capital reserve for a capital project, we can't take it out to pay for salaries or for diesel. It can only be taken out to utilize for capital funds. So as we use it, it goes away. And really every one of our reserves, almost all of our reserves, have a shelf life. So like for our capital projects, our capital reserves, typically they have a 5-year shelf life, so you can keep it active for 5 years. And if you don't use it, then you could reallocate that money to a new capital reserve. So you can roll it over, but it takes authorization by the board and by the voters to create those. In the past couple of years, actually since COVID, this board has done an outstanding job of taking a lot of that extra money that was coming in through COVID monies and creating a lot of reserves. So again, we're sitting, I think it's right around 15 million just in building capital reserve. That's a fantastic number. So again, when we're talking about let's call it an $80 million project, we're going to get, say, 90% of that back on state aid. We're responsible for around 8 million. We've got plenty of money to cover for that. And every year, all of those monies are also earning interest. Again, this district was one of the ones at the forefront, investing that money in a different manner at an interest rate that's almost double what you can get commercially through any local bank. So again, I think our district, under Mr. Brady, this board, Mr. Brulette, and now being carried on, has set us up in some really good financial position by not spending all that extra money that was coming in and setting aside for today. So.
Thank you.
I see that we're asking for 150,000 for an SRO. That's for one more?
That's for one additional SRO for the year.
Not for two.
Right.
The other one is already covered.
Right. We already
Seems like a lot, no? 150?
I'm sorry?
It seems like a lot at 150K.
It does, and these are and it's always important to talk about why that's $150,000. So, the SRO is with us the majority of their work year. So that covers the salary, the benefits, it covers, all the benefits, so the FICA, the payroll taxes, all of that. They've established that. What we also don't have is we don't get dinged for the police vehicle that our SRO has. And so we don't have to pay for the car, we don't pay for the gasoline for the police vehicle. I shouldn't say that. It's all incorporated. So the police vehicle, the equipment that the officer has, the annual training, the uniform, all of those things that go into the officer, it's all covered in that $150,000. So again, it sounds like a lot, but if you compare it to what a teacher costs, it's pretty close in terms of just the salary and benefits, and then you throw extra all the training and all the others that go in as well. It's pretty close. It might actually be a little bit lower than what some of the other schools are paying. Some schools have contracted with the county for a St. Lawrence County deputy, and their costs are very, very similar to ours.
Do we have a need for a second officer, SRO?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a need for a second SRO?
Do we have a need? Absolutely. As of earlier this week, our SRO has had 1,100 interactions with students just this year, and we still have, about 27 or 28% of the year to go. The SRO is frequently in demand, trying to determine how to triage. Am I at the high school, or am I running over to Jefferson, or am I at the junior high? This afternoon, he was here dealing with a situation until 4 o'clock, which without him, we would probably not have had as good of a resolution as we did. There is a letter that I'll be sharing with the board over the weekend where a student is talking about a career, and in the main body of that letter discusses what our SRO has done for the individual. And basically you'll notice that in this letter the individual student is talking about pretty much the path that they were on, which was not a good path, and now this student is looking at a career in law enforcement, and the turnaround is all due to Officer Flynn. And the student is extremely pointed about the impact that Officer Flynn has had. So when I look at what Officer Flynn has cost this district over the past 2 years, if we say it's a total of $300,000 since he joined us in March of 24, $300,000 for him compared to possibly a 20-year incarceration for this student. Yep, it's worth it. The number of the impact that it has had on our students. When we have students asking for the law enforcement officer, when you have parents asking, it's like I'll say it again, it's our probation officer as well, who's assigned to Massena. It's unusual. Students have opened up to our SRO in ways that just are unfathomable, and the difference is being felt. Even families are asking, for his help. He's also been extremely instrumental in helping getting greater ties with PAL. We've got the Boost program, which is a daytime program for students who are attending 3 to 5 or who are on out-of-school suspension, so that they actually have a place to go during the day, and working with trusted adults, with counselors, and he makes frequent visits over there checking in on them. His day here usually ends around 3 o'clock, and the village is good to allow him overtime so he can then spend another hour or more at PAL every day with these kids. It's phenomenal, the impact that he's making.
I believe in Mr. Flynn, what he does. I know him. He's a good guy. But I feel like what you're saying is what a therapist would do. And I see that we hire a therapist for $100K and we're investing $150K for a SRO. That's why I don't see the value. And I know we need more aides, and we get 2 or 3 aides for that price. So I believe that we should have therapists to support those kids. But I don't believe that we should invest in the SRO. We're not in the safety or security business. Our mission is to educate the kids, and we have a police force in town. So I don't know why we should pay for that. So I don't agree with that. but I'm only one voice.
I think it's pretty important. I mean, I talk to a lot of schools and driving around with what I do. We're understaffed in that area compared to most of the schools. There's schools our size around the North Country from Lewis County up to here that have one in every building, not just one that does 5 buildings. So I think in looking at how other people operate with that, I think it's important that we find a place for them in our buildings, and for a lot of the reasons Mr. Burke just said. But not only that, I mean, police officers' presence makes a difference. It makes a difference for kids and how they view them and how they grow up with them. So I think when you put that aspect in with everything he just mentioned, it's invaluable to our district and our kids.
It is really expensive, but one thing to note is that with our SRO and with a second SRO, we have active physical law enforcement officers. So they have a law enforcement vehicle on campus with them. And that's different from some of the other, from some other schools who do have school resource officers, but they don't have a law enforcement vehicle, and they don't actively work on a daily basis with the local law enforcement. So I think that's a real benefit for us here in Massena.
And just to address what you were saying about aides in the school, we actually are a little overstaffed with aides. So we're always looking at, you know, how is that impacting students? So I think that, you know, being part of the finance committee, we really have discussed that. So if it's a concern that you have, I understand, but I just wanted you to know that we have really looked at that too.
Any other questions on the budget? One last thing, and we heard it at Rural Schools Conference earlier this week. There is a major question mark around when the state budget will be passed because of the high holidays that are coming up, and whether or not the Assembly and the Senate will actually be in session, if they can even come close to an agreement to do a vote. The thought would be we'd either have one a couple of days late or perhaps as long as a month late. So we're going to be operating a little bit here in the dark. You're probably going to be asked as a board to approve a budget, I'm afraid, without knowing what the state aid numbers are. So we'll stay on that conservative side of the 2% and not bank on anything further. And if it comes, great. But it's not looking like it's going to be an on-time budget this year.
I think it was a month late last year, wasn't it?
Yes.
The good old days.
Yes. Okay. Shall I move on? Next couple of items, you are going to be asked to approve an out-of-country field trip for Nightingale's grade 4 to Upper Canada Village. Also, a bus utilization request from PAL for March 20th to the Massena Arena, and that's a one-way trip. They're just going there, and then they'll be picked up by their families. And finally, a disposal of declaring as surplus a 2019 Dodge Caravan. We have used that for pupil transportation, and again, we're replacing that with one of our Traverses. One of the other things I should just mention, it's going to be another action item. I'm sorry, you'll be asked to approve a SECRA resolution, and that SECRA is for the capital outlay project to do the asbestos abatement at JW. And Mr. Haggett, I believe that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. We'll move on now to recommended actions and start with the consent agenda items. Are there any items that any board member would like to have pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So move.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, moving on to our individual items for action. We have approval of a memorandum of agreement with the St. Lawrence County Board of Elections.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Next is approval of the out-of-country field trip.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Next is the approval of the bus utilization request from PAL.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Approval of the disposal of the surplus item.
So move.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. And approval of the secret resolution.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments? And this is, it's just it's an environmental form, basically.
Right, yes, yes.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. And next is resolution number 1, which is a paid administrative leave.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I thought that that was not going to be on the agenda.
No, it needs to be on the agenda, but that one had an end date.
The date was
Yes.
the 6th of March to the
Okay.
18th.
Question answered? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay. And resolution number 2, another paid administrative leave.
So move.
Questions or comments? All in favor? And next we'll move on to personnel action items, and Mr. Burke.
I recommend approval of action items listed as numbers 1 through 35.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay.
I also recommend approval of personnel items numbers 36 through 48.
So second.
Any questions? All in favor? And we have one more item for action, a resolution for a sick leave allowance.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? And no no's, no abstentions. So that takes care of our business on the agenda. We'll now move on to new business, and if anyone would like to bring up items for discussion at a future meeting, now would be the time.
I think we should have a discussion about the EV mandate. I think we need to get facts and figures together to either support it or to not support it because of financial reasons, and I think it needs to be delineated to the public what the financial impact could be if the governor doesn't acquiesce to push the mandate out. As I understand from the transportation department, this will be the last year that we can order diesel buses, and we will have to start replacing our fleet with EVs if the mandate of
without a waiver, right?
Without a waiver.
There is a waiver possibility, is that correct, Mr. Burke?
There is a waiver. I will be applying for it at some point over the course of the next year. So next year is a waiver year, automatic for everybody. After that, we can apply, or we can really apply anytime for an extra 2-year waiver. It goes by a point system. I think we're going to qualify for those points to get that waiver. If we don't, then yes, we do have to begin purchasing electric. To Trish's point, I think the governor is coming out, and she's publicly talking now about extending the runway. I think that's her term. Not eliminate the mandate, but give more time. If we look at what the state of California did, they have a very similar process, but they also recognize the challenges for rural schools, and they have put in 5-year extensions. And I don't believe I haven't read that there's a limit of the number of extensions. So there's some common sense approach. They've extended the runway in California. And as the governor is going around the state, she is now talking about extending that runway. Now, whether she's talking about zero emission buses or fossil fuel heat for new construction, I'm not sure. But she's recognizing, I think, the affordability. That seems to be a common theme of the governor right now. I think now's the time that we support the governor in that approach, extend this runway. She's up, I think, for a real battle. Both houses have indicated not real interested in extending that. They like, some that are in power like the law as it is and don't really see a need to extend that. And their feeling is, if you extend it, we're never going to change climate back to what they feel it should be. I think if we go out and we publicly, in your letter to, if you want to do some mailings, I think now's the time. I'm taking a little different approach from what I may have been saying before, but let's support the governor. If that's really what she wants to do, is to extend that runway, especially as it relates to zero emission buses, give her that support that she needs to hopefully get that done with, the folks across the street. I think it's important, Trish, too, that we keep talking about the cost. The cost, every study that schools have done, the ones that have jumped into this, it's not great. We're talking more than 3 times per mile the cost just to operate the electric bus. That does not include, the actual additional cost of infrastructure or the cost of the bus itself. That's just to run those buses. Those are real dollar figures. And, especially in a community like Massena, where we get a certain power allocation, our residents are already feeling the crunch of what happens when we exceed that. And we know that there's a proposal, right? I think it's been approved that our rates are going to go up again, just with Massena Electric. The impact of adding a fleet of 40 electric buses over time, that's only going to cause more local heartache. So I think we can talk about all of those things and be very fact-driven, but again, give the governor perhaps some support in this endeavor that she's taking us down. Now's not the time to finger point about why that law is in existence, but hey, if we've got a major politician saying, you know what, I'm listening, folks, absolutely. Let's, I've given her my letter. I'm supporting her 100% with this. I'll probably write another one this week saying thank you for the runway. Make it as long as you can, and you've got our support. So I think that's really important coming from the North Country. If we get some more of that out there to the governor, that, yeah, thank you for doing this and keep up the fight.
Do you send one on the behalf of the board?
I send it on my own as a district, but I think board members, if you're willing to sign on to something, now's the time, and maybe send individual letters as well.
I'll sign your letter if you want more name on it.
Okay.
As a
I'll
board
work
member.
up a draft, and you can either sign it as a group, or we can each do our own individual. But I do think it's important. We've got some traction, and we didn't have that just a couple of weeks ago.
That's good to hear, because when we went to Lake Placid, the legislators there were not thinking that she was going to budge at all.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that there's some movement, because it was not communicated at that time that this was going to be a possibility. And also it was communicated by Senator Steck, who said those waivers are not easy to get.
They're not. They won't be. And I think also, Senator Steck is taking, and again, not to play politics here, but Senator Steck is also saying, okay, let's see how we can work within that law. And that's what we talked about the last board meeting, right? If I had to have an electric bus here, there are routes that we could do that on. I'm not real willing to take it out to the territory, which is one of my longest runs. Up on some of our streets here, yeah, I think it could work. So, you know, let's find where there's compromise. It'd be kind of nice to go back to the 1980s and 90s where we can actually discuss and have compromise as opposed to it's either all or nothing. And I'm hoping that's kind of where the governor's trying to lead us in Albany to get to. So, you know, if we can encourage both sides of the aisle to come together and say, yes, environmental concerns are real, we can deal with that, but so are economic concerns. And how do we come to that compromise? And it's a little bit like what you folks do here every month. Robert, you're a perfect example tonight, right? We have civil discourse. We discuss our ideas, we share our feelings without being disagreeable. So I think if we can approach it that way with the governor and the legislative leaders, once again, Massena will be setting the example.
Those buses were designed for the city, and here it doesn't make sense. It helps clean the city, not emitting diesel in the middle of the city, but here we have long roads, and it's not good to have cold bus like this on the long roads.
And this is from a man who drives a Tesla.
He admitted he doesn't drive it in the winter. He did admit that to me.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason.
Yes.
If you would like, I could do some research and provide a part of my presentation on arguments for and against electric buses.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
If you would like, I could provide arguments for and against on my next presentation for electric buses.
Yes. I think we might have a future mechanical engineer who might come up with a better system to have a hybrid on a bus. So if you could kind of fast track your work on that, Andrew, we'd appreciate it.
On a different subject, Paul. When the pandemic hit, we had to turn around and keep the student at home, and we gave them laptops. I just realized this week that the first graders are working on Chromebooks. Second graders, third graders, they're behind a screen. How long are they behind a screen, and is that good for them? Can we look into that and see if it's really worth it to have? I mean, does it have to be all student? I don't think kindergarten kids have computers, but what about first graders? Do they really need them? Second graders? Maybe we could introduce them later and have them work on paper and pen and eye contact and not look at a screen. It seems like we're encouraging the families to be behind a screen at a very early age.
I will say that I think especially young kids now will have access to screens either way, whether or not we give them access to Chromebooks. So, but there are definitely a lot of studies that show adverse effects of lots of screen time.
And if they start at fourth grade, for example, to have a screen, would they be behind that much? Can they recoup that time in a few weeks? I don't think it's that complicated to operate a computer. The benefits of exposing them 3-4 years behind a computer is not, I think there's more detriment.
Well, as long as New York State has their state tests online, starting in third grade, kids have to know how to do keyboarding. We started them in kindergarten. We had no choice. I mean, that part of it, they need to know, they need to be able to get around a Chromebook, keyboarding-wise.
Knowing how to type is a very important skill, and from a lot of my friends that are in college right now, they notice that many students type with just one finger and don't actually know how to navigate a keyboard correctly. So.
But do you start typing with the correct keyboard at the first grade? I don't think so.
When did we start at Trinity?
Kindergarten.
So you're 5 fingers on the keyboard in kindergarten?
I vividly remember the orange skins covering the keyboards.
I started later, and I don't think I was behind, but nobody was behind. There was no computer before.
I will say I understand what you're saying, and we talk about that. We want students with teachers, and we want books in their hands and pencils. So I agree with what you're saying. The other side of it is exposure. New York State does have digital fluency standards at those young ages. So it's about using them in a timely way to engage students, to practice, to have that exposure, but also limit it. So what you're describing is what we want the majority of our time being. We're actually having conversations right now at the elementary level using iReady. About a decade ago, that was the huge push in our region, get students on Chromebooks, have them using iReady. This was how they were going to make so many gains. And it's certainly a great tool. It's a great tool for our benchmark assessments. It gives us data to drive our instruction. But the conversation is, do we want them necessarily on the computer for those lessons? And so we're talking about that, right? It's the thing with technology, it progresses so quickly, and it's an ethical question. It's a philosophy. It's a belief system of how much do we use it, when do we use it, how do we use it? So we do have those conversations, but just also understand there is requirements from the state as well.
Sounds like we're on top of it then.
Well, Robert does, I couldn't agree more. But we did our teachers and our students an incredible disservice during COVID for many reasons. And we had no choice. But we swung the pendulum so far one way that everything became computer-based. And it was 2 years ago when we sat with high school students, and when you have a really top-notch student say, why do I come to school when it's all on Google Classroom? I'll tell you what, you and I were in the same group, right? And that was a gut punch to both of us. What we forgot to do after COVID is to give our teachers permission to teach, to go back to being human beings and to teach. So we're really trying to get there. There's a happy medium here, and I think we're swinging back that way. I've shared with my colleagues at the superintendent's table that, yeah, we're a one-to-one school, but we don't send Chromebooks home. And the look on their faces was, wow. And I said, look, not only were we losing them, but we're also trying to de-emphasize that that's our only source. There are other ways to learn, and it's person to person. And you can see some of the wheels spinning. I don't know if any of the other schools will start to fall in line with that. But again, we recognize that there are reasons for having the Chromebooks or computers, but there's also reasons not to. And again, it's trying to find that happy medium, that balance. So, but we did not do our teachers good service by, hey, you're released. Go back, swing back a little bit. And we're working on that.
The last thing that I'd like to bring up is, I brought it up last time about the seniors and the survey and everything, and then we did get a communication that said that the high school was interested in having the reception as we did last year, and I'm wondering if maybe we could get together as a group, so the high school principal, maybe somebody from the guidance office, et cetera, and then have a small group talk about where we are and where we want to go with the future.
Yeah, Mr. Oliver is working on getting his team together, and as soon as I get those names, I'll survey. I think there are 4 board members that wanted to be part of that.
Okay.
We'll come up with a time to meet, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. I hope to get that done before spring break.
Okay.
That way we can also start talking about the senior tee, and if we want to make any
Yes.
changes to that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, which is being met with a lot of excitement again, so that's good.
Okay.
And I think there's also a lot of excitement too about moving away from Life Track and taking ownership ourselves.
Okay. So you'll let us know?
I'm sorry?
You'll let us know when,
Yes, absolutely, yes.
that happens? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with future agenda items? Okay, we have no one here to make comments to the board from the public or press, so I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Should we say that there's going to be a play at the high school here pretty soon? Did we say something about it? No. To invite.
Oh, we certainly can.
I couldn't hear.
I'm not, the school musical
Oh.
is coming up exactly when. I'm not involved this year personally, so I don't know the details intimately. March 27th and 28th. And I think those are 2 evening performances, or is there a matinee? There's a matinee on Saturday. So, what, mchsmusical.com, is that correct? Get your tickets. 27th and 28th. I would now entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move. Or already said?
Second.
All in favor? Have a great night and get your musical tickets.